Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are completely dismantling the guilt and shame that usually surrounds weight loss. We're diving into some incredible insights from metabolism expert Dr. Jason Fung and biohacker Dave Esprey. And instead of relying on that old, tired myth of willpower, we're going to explore the actual science of metabolism to see exactly why standard diet advice is fundamentally broken, and, more importantly, how we can fix it.
So let's jump right in by asking the most fundamental question that modern diet culture completely ignores. Why are we always hungry? I mean, when someone wants to lose weight, the standard medical advice is usually just, well, eat less. But honestly, that advice is practically useless because it never addresses why the person is eating so much in the first place. Think about it. There is a universal biological truth here. We eat because we're hungry, and we stop when we're full. So the real crisis we're facing isn't an overeating problem at all. It's an overhunger problem.
Failing a diet is a systemic, biological, and environmental issue. It's not a lack of willpower. If you sit someone in a room literally surrounded by food and tell them to just starve themselves for months using sheer willpower, they're eventually going to give in. Your body is biologically wired to keep you from starving. Telling someone who is fighting deep, physiological hunger signals to just try harder is not only unhelpful, it actually creates this incredibly toxic cycle of self-loathing and shame.
To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look at root causes, using a concept called the 3 W's, basically asking why 3 times. Think about the Titanic. If you ask why did the Titanic sink, and the answer is because it hit an iceberg, well, that's technically true, but it's super superficial. If your solution for future captains is just, don't hit icebergs, you haven't solved anything. And that's exactly what calories in, calories out is. It's literally the don't hit icebergs of nutrition. If you ask the second why did it hit the iceberg? It's because they couldn't turn in time. Or in our case, we eat too much. But that third why is where the magic actually happens. Why couldn't they turn? Because they were going way too fast. For us, the answer is because we are artificially, constantly hungry.
So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that we need a permanent shift in perspective. The old model forces you into this daily, agonizing battle with your own biology. If you simply restrict calories but change nothing else, you're going to be ravenous all the time. But in the new model, we look at the root cause. If you fix the hunger by giving your body the right nutrients and signals, you naturally eat less without all that intense suffering. You actually stop fighting yourself.
Moving on to Section 1. The anatomy of hunger, identifying the root cause. You see, hunger isn't just one monolithic feeling. Our bodies actually experience 3 very distinct types of cravings, and treating them all the exact same way is just a recipe for failure.
The first type is homeostatic hunger. Now, this is the physical, biological need for energy. It's your stomach actually growling. When you eat real nutrient-dense foods, your body releases satiety hormones, like leptin, that literally tell your brain, okay, we have enough energy, you can stop eating now. But honestly, in our modern world where food is incredibly abundant and always accessible, pure homeostatic hunger is actually the rarest reason we eat today.
The second type is hedonic hunger. This explains that classic dessert stomach phenomenon. You know, you can eat a massive dinner, feel completely physically stuffed, and yet when someone brings out a warm apple pie and ice cream, you suddenly find room out of nowhere. You aren't eating for nutrients, you're eating for the dopamine hit, for comfort, or maybe just because you're bored or stressed. This completely overrides your natural fullness signals.
And the third, which might actually be the most powerful of all, is conditioned hunger. We all know the concept of Pavlov's dogs, right? Well, we do this to ourselves constantly. You get in the car to commute, you feel like you need a coffee and a pastry. You sit down to watch a movie, you suddenly crave popcorn. It has absolutely nothing to do with needing calories. Your brain has just been trained to pair specific environments and activities with eating.
Let's look at Section 2, the modern trap, ultra-processed foods and food noise. It's genuinely fascinating and a little scary to see how food companies actively weaponize these exact biological mechanisms against us.
A staggering 70% of the American diet is now made up of ultra-processed foods. Let me put that into perspective for you. If you take a genetically identical population, say people living in Japan with very low obesity rates, and move them to the United States, their risk of obesity skyrockets in just one single generation. It's not their genetics that changed, and it's certainly not a sudden collective loss of willpower. It is a systemic, environmental disaster.
So how exactly is this trap set? Well, ultra-processed foods are literally chemically engineered to bypass our fullness signals. They're designed for maximum hedonic pleasure. They use a sneaky trick called vanishing caloric density. Think of a cheese puff, right? It melts in your mouth so quickly that your brain doesn't even register you've eaten anything substantial, so you never feel full, but you're still ingesting massive calories. Furthermore, these foods are so heavily processed, they absorb into your bloodstream almost instantly, giving you a massive dopamine spike, very similar to how highly addictive drugs work. They even use artificial texturizers like carrageenan and xanthan gum to mimic the creamy, satisfying feel of real fats without providing any actual nutritional satisfaction whatsoever.
Thanks to this brilliantly engineered food and constant environmental cues, we're living in a world of deafening food noise. Billboards, Netflix product placements, drive-thrus on literally every corner. We're conditioned to salivate and eat all day long without ever actually needing the nutrients. We become Pavlov's dogs, constantly triggered by a world that just wants us grazing nonstop.
Section 3. The antidote. Escaping the trap. Once we understand exactly how this machine works, we can step outside of it, and we can do it without relying on that deeply flawed concept of willpower.
Based on Dr. Fung's methodology, here are your 3 golden rules to take back control. First up, cut the ultra-processed fake foods. When you eat real, nutrient-dense foods like healthy fats and proteins, your body actually registers fullness, and that raging hunger, it simply disappears. Second, ensure adequate fasting periods. We aren't meant to eat from the moment we wake up until the second we go to sleep. Giving your body a break extinguishes that conditioned habit of constant grazing. And finally, redesign your schedule and your physical environment. If you work from home at the kitchen table 3 feet from the pantry, you are going to eat. Change your environment to eliminate the food noise. Substitute habits. If you always snack watching TV, have a hot cup of green tea ready instead. Break the pairing.
As you look at your next meal, or maybe you feel that sudden urge to snack while sitting in traffic, I want to leave you with this final thought. Ask yourself, are you feeding your body's energy, or are you just feeding your environment's noise? Once you learn to separate the two, you don't even need willpower anymore. You just need the right code. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this completely changes how you view your next meal.